Hello everyone and welcome to my vlog. This is my life. It is 12:18 p.m. here in New York, and here I am coming to you live from our room, sitting on my bed. Now, originally I had it set up where I was going to have an actual seat to sit in, and I would have a little tiny little area where I could do my sit down videos, but unfortunately I live in a room and I lost the space that I was going to have to do my sit down vlogs, which really sucks because I'm on a bed, it's bouncy, and it it makes me feel like I look frumpy, okay? It does because I'm sitting down and my clothes don't hang right when you're sitting down, and that's not the look you want to have when you're making videos for millions of people out there. And unfortunately, this is what I have to work with, which really sucks. I really wish I could bring out my chair and have my space back, but unfortunately, when you live in a room and you got to bring more stuff in um, because you have nowhere else to put it, this is what happens. And hopefully soon we will get an apartment and get out of here, because right now we're on a waiting list, and hopefully soon we can get out of here and be in a better position, because this place is like, it's a mental health killer and it's a health killer. I'll explain that more to you in another video. Okay, so today is September 11th. My question to all of my viewers is, where were you on September 11th, 2001? Where were you in 2001 on this day? Where were you? I can remember where I was on this day. I was actually at work. I was a preschool teacher slash a cook. What I did is I taught my class during class time, and then when it came time for meals or snacks, I would leave my classroom, go into the kitchen, and I would prepare the meals and the snacks and get everything, prepped, get dishes washed, everything, then return back to my classroom. Um, when this all happened, I was pulled out of my classroom by my supervisor, and we were brought into her office while teachers' assistants kept an eye on our classrooms. And that's where we watched on the TV as the second plane hit the Twin Towers. Now, what happened to me the day before is what makes today a very memorable, makes it a very memorable day for me. And it makes me glad that I'm alive. Glad that I'm alive. No matter all my struggles I've gone through and whatnot. What happened to me on September 10th of 2001, however you want to say it, will always be embedded in my head. It'll always be embedded in my head. And you're probably thinking to yourself, what happened on September 10th that has it so embedded into your brain that it's something that you will remember forever? Not a lot of people know that I'm a writer. I've been writing since I was about 12, 13 years old. It started off with short stories, novellas, and it was always my dream to become a published writer. Well, I had written a book, and I had submitted a short little entry to some publishing companies, and I was trying my best to get published. find somebody that would publish my book, which would mean I would need to find an agent and then a publisher and then, get approval of everything. And, that does take time. It does take time. So I wasn't getting anywhere, sending letters because, back then I was not big on the internet or whatever. So I sent it by snail mail. So I decided with some savings that I had that I was going to take a trip to New York City because you got publishers out there, you got the agents out there, and I thought that would be my best bet would for me to actually go in person to these places. So I requested some time off from my job and I got the approval. My classroom was covered by somebody. That's great. On September 10th, I decided that I was going to go to the bank and pull money out in the form of traveler's checks. I didn't have a debit card on me. I didn't want to have cash on me. It would have been my first real trip because at the time I was only how old was I? I was 20 years old. I was only 20 years old at the time. And I really didn't know much about what I needed to travel. And the only thing I knew was from what I learned in movies is when you're going to travel, you have traveler's checks. So I was going to the bank. And when I was driving to the bank, I got not too far away from my parents' house because obviously I was still living at home. I got not too far from my parents' house and went over the railroad tracks and I kept going and all of a sudden flames burst out underneath my hood. Scared the shit out of me. Scared the living shit out of me. I swerved my car to the side of the road, putting it partially in a ditch. I jumped out of my car really fast. Flames are still there. Bursted underneath my hood. I'm scared shitless. Ran to the other side of the road. I lived in a really country, small town. So all that was around me was fields. Anyways, I stood at the side of the road watching my car, and it was just the hood that caught fire. Nothing else was catching fire. You would think, okay, it's a car, everything would catch fire and then the gasoline would cause it to, boom, there goes my car. No, just my hood. Well, as I'm standing there watching, the flames started to go down. And when the flames got all the way down, I started to walk across the street and get closer to my car. And now I didn't get really close to the car. I just got close to the car. And I stood there for a little while, waiting to see if the flames would come back. The flames didn't come back. So what did I do? I had no cell phone because I didn't even own a cell phone then. I had no cell phone, so I decided I'm going to run back home. I'm going to run back home. Back in the day when I could actually run without being hurt. I ran home, found my dad, and told him what had happened. And I told him that I need to get my car out of the ditch and I need to get that thing back home. So he started looking around for his tow strap. Couldn't find it. He came up with a plan. So we hopped in my dad's truck and we headed down the road to my car. My dad pulled up behind my car, and because of the way the ditch is, because it's not one of the ditches that go like this, it was just kind of a kind of ditch. He was able to go behind my car and push it up out of the position I had put it in. So it didn't take too much to bump my car and get it around. I had to be in the driver's seat steering. So we got the car completely out of the little ditch, groove, whatever you want to call it. And we got it onto the road. Now we're trying to figure out how are we going to get this car turned around and how are we going to get it back? So once it was in the road, my dad got behind my car and bumped my car. There was a house across the street that had one of those horseshoe driveways. So my dad was able to bump me around the horseshoe driveway and get me back on the road facing home. So he bumped my car all the way home. And once we got home, it got bumped into the yard, and that's where it sat. So while my dad's trying to figure out what the hell happened to my car, the hood had already cooled off and everything. It was just a freak accident right there. I went inside and I called my supervisor. I explained the situation and I told her, because I knew I wasn't going to New York City now, not with my car, needing repairs or needing to be replaced. I could not afford to take a trip and then I'm not going to have a car. So I called my supervisor and asked if I'm able to come into work because I need to cancel my plans because something happened to my vehicle. Plans need to be canceled. And I was wondering if I could come back into my classroom and be able to work. Luckily, I was able to come in and work. Unfortunately, I cannot remember if I went back into my classroom or I was just in the kitchen for the duration of the time that I decided to take off from work, which was only for a week. I decided to only take a week off. That right there, that situation that happened to me is what is embedded in my brain. Because if that did not happen to my car, because I was going to drive myself to New York City. So that was another thing. That was my transportation in New York City. If that did not happen to my car, I would have taken that trip to New York City. And my goal when I first got to New York City, because it would have been late, I would have just went straight to bed. And the next morning, the first thing I wanted to see was the Twin Towers. I wanted to see the Twin Towers. If what happened to my car never happened, I probably would not be here today or any other day to be able to tell my story on how I cheated death and how I am so grateful that I did not make it to New York City on September 11th, 2001, 2001, whatever you want to call it. What happened to my car saved me. It saved me. It made it so I was not in New York City on that day. The September 11th of that year is a day that so many of us are never going to forget. Especially people that live in New York City. They're not going to forget. People live in New York. We're not going to forget. We were attacked by a terrorist. We had buildings destroyed because somebody decided to airjack an airplane. Airplanes. We were threatened that day. And so many lives were lost because of that. People in the planes, people on ground, people in those Twin Towers. So many lives were lost. And the sad thing is along with those lives that were lost, there are people that lost their lives shortly afterwards because they inhaled all that smoke and that debris from when those towers collapsed. Now, I know there's a lot of conspiracies that have been going around about how those towers collapsed, but we know that a plane hit it. We don't know if something was implanted inside the building and helped it collapse. We don't know. And that's not something we should worry about. We should not be worrying about that. I don't care how it collapsed. It collapsed because of terrorists. And there's some things that people don't know that will shock a lot of people. And that's the fact of, where was our president when all this happened? Where was our president? He was supposed to be at the Pentagon. But where was our president? I'll give you a moment to think about that. Where was our president? Wasn't in the White House. Wasn't at the Pentagon. Where was our president? You know where our president was? At Camp David. At Camp David. Do you know why our president was there? Do you know why our president was there? Because he was informed that this was going to happen. He knew this was going to happen. And he let it happen. He cowered and hid. He knew this was going to happen. And that's not a conspiracy. That's the military knowing shit. President of the United States that we had back then, Mr. Bush, knew what was going to happen. So he took the coward's way out without helping and fled to Camp David. Because he knew what was being targeted. Now, one of the planes got off course and ended up landing in a field and whatnot. But he knew exactly where those other ones were headed. The ones that were heading for the Twin Towers, and the one that was in the direction of the Pentagon. And that right there is not a conspiracy. It's truth. He was well aware what was going to happen. So, to those family and friends that lost loved ones because of the 9/11 terrorist attack, and to those friends and family that lost loved ones because of the inhalation of the smoke, the debris, for the loved ones, family and friends that are caring for people that are still sick from what happened, my heart goes out to all of you. My heart goes out to all of you. What happened that day could have been stopped. The President of the United States had an opportunity to intervene and keep these terrorists away from us. He could have had our Air Force up in the sky, ready for what was going to happen. He knew, and he did not stop it. He did not stop it. So if anybody is to blame for what happened on 9/11, 2001, it's the terrorists, and it is our President of the United States that we had back then. President Bush did not do his job. Did not do his job. And I don't care who comes after me for this. Okay? I really don't. 9/11 could have been avoided. But it happened. We can't change history. We can't go back in time. I wish we could. We can't go back in time, and we can't change anything. We cannot bring back those lost lives. We cannot eliminate the hurt that people feel. Now, with all that, there's something that I need to ask all of you. Where you live, are the flags dropped? Are they dropped? Because I don't think they are out here where I live. Is school in session right now? It's not in session. It is in session here. Are the banks open? I don't know. I'm at home, so I don't know about that one. If I'm not mistaken, after this all went down and it got to be 2002, schools were not open for September 11th. Flags were dropped. Banks were closed. Anything government was closed. But why recently have I noticed that the flags aren't going down? School's in session. And I don't know about the other because I don't really pay attention to banks or anything. But why does it seem like people have forgotten? Why does it seem like people don't care? And in my opinion, I've been noticing that this has been a change since we ended up with Obama. And I noticed that it has been a change that's been keep going ever since we had Joe Biden. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. So let's all sit, stand, whatever you're doing while you are watching this video, and let's have another thing. Oh, wait a minute. Let's hold the phone. Also, question for you guys before we do what I was going to say. 8:36 a.m. Did anybody hear any church bells chiming? Probably not. That was another thing that we used to do, but it's not happening anymore. All right, so back to what I was going to say. It's 12:40 p.m. here in New York. Let's sit, stand, whatever you're doing right now, and let's have a moment of silence for those lost, perished in what happened on September 11th, 2001. Let's have a moment of silence for them. So, with that all being said, I want everyone to have a great day today and cherish those that you are surrounded by. Cherish those moments you spend with your loved ones because in the snap of your finger, That can all be taken away. So I'm being interrupted by what sounds like construction sounds outside or just loud people. So I'm going to end my video and I hope to see you guys soon. So bye for now, everyone.